Buenos dias, buenas tardes, buenas noches, bonjour, bonsoir, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever you may be. J. Slater case and cap on backwards with the plain white background means it is time for the AG Focus or the Sunday Roast. In this case, it is a combination of two. The Sunday Roast is going to be a focus on the AG member. Namely, it is long overdue, the one and only Thomas the Great, Mark Dearden, Thomas the Terrible, Thomas the Wanker, the Sage of Seat Indelible, goes by various titles. It is one person, I believe. Now, we turn to good old Thomas because I think he made a comment recently that does exemplify the actual stupidity, the thick-headedness, the low-level thinking of the accident group in general. Because we are talking about, of course, what is happening in the world of my teaching, my online teaching, and that whole scenario. Now, I keep telling everyone repeatedly, but the ones with cloth ears, a la Mark Dearden, etc., just can't seem to absorb basic information. I've said that my last day of teaching with, I better say this slowly and clearly so that the 5-year-old IQ level of Dearden and Co. grasps what I'm saying. My last day of online teaching with Little English was April the 3rd of 2026. That's it. So after April the 3rd of 2026, one would expect any mention of me on their website to be removed. I know this is a very difficult concept for the AG dullards to grasp, but the very fact that I am no longer mentioned on their website would indicate that I am not working for them. I don't think the fact that I'm not appearing there right now would indicate that I have been sacked this week, last week, 2 months ago, a year ago. And that's not how it works. As jugglers so wisely pointed out, it is not the thing that a professional company does when they fire someone to tell the general public when that happened. So why would anyone in the accident group, particularly the likes of Dullard Dearden, ever think that I had been sacked? If that's not what a professional company ever says, why assume it? We're waiting for any answers. Why assume that I would have been sacked when no one ever said I was? The only clue, well, it's not much of a clue, is that back in the first week of June of 2025, when the first wave of hate came pouring in from the accident group because they had found that I was employed by Little English, that first wave of hate and demands for me to be removed, etc., that all came in and was a horrible shock, of course, to the founders of Little English, but they rode it out. They basically said, you know what, let's just, let this go for a few weeks and then see what happens. And in aid of that, I said, yeah, and furthermore, let me just put out a post that says we have parted company and not specify for how long or give any details. And that's what was done. And that's what did happen. To a certain extent, we did part company in that Little English founders agreed they would not be setting up any new classes for me. And I was 100% supportive of that because, and true to this day, I am looking to get out of teaching. I'm looking to get out of working. I mean, I would rather go from semi-retirement to full retirement. And so I said, you know what, this is a great opportunity for me to focus on the students that I have. And then as they drop out, I will not replace them. And then I can ease myself out of the online teaching world. It was a perfect arrangement. No one got fired. No one got sacked. It was just that. Let's put out that announcement. Let me keep going with the existing students, and I will ease myself out over the year or over the years. So what the likes of Dearden find very hard to grasp is that when Little English say, as one of the founders has said, that I no longer work for them, that is true. I haven't since April the 3rd, 2026. When the founder of Little English says haven't worked for them for some time, or whatever the phrase was, that is true. No one is telling any lies here. Let us go to the actual quote of Dullard Dearden to see where his failure to grasp basic information is to be found. And it's actually on Janie 180's page here. Not that anyone would find Janie's 180 page because she usually comments to herself. But here, Thomas the Great did pop up. And he says, as I've already pointed out, in the unlikely event that his employer, he's talking about my employer, wasn't being honest, then it would just be escalated to the education authority. He couldn't possibly get around having left a damning trail behind him. Not really sure what Thomas is getting on here, but he does say in the unlikely event that his employer wasn't being honest. So that's another way of Thomas saying it could be that Smith is telling the whole truth here. Yeah, and it could be that the employer has been, let's say, economical with the truth. There's no lie involved here. Not at all. As far as I can see it, if Thomas or Janie or Jugglers or, well, Luggy can't actually read, I know. But if anyone can point out where anyone has lied or said anything that isn't true here, go ahead. I can't see it. But what about this bit? Escalated to the education authority. I'll repeat, Thomas. I stopped working on April the 3rd, 2026 with Little English. That was my last class. Little English didn't know that, by the way. Only I knew that. But my last student, who used to pop up every now and then for a 1-hour conversation class, that was his last class, April the 3rd. I haven't seen him since then, so I told Little English that we'd better assume this guy isn't going to want any more classes, and let's call it quits. That is why, from that point on, from the other day when I communicated with them about that, my profile has gone, as it should be gone. It's no surprise. That's how it should be. We all support that. It is all correct. But if, Thomas, you have any evidence whatsoever that you could submit that shows that I got fired in June of 2025, do that. On the other hand, Thomas, Janie, Jugglers, Luggy, and the rest of you, what I have done is submit evidence that shows I was still being employed after June 2025. June 2025 was when you guys said I'd been fired. If I'd been fired in June 2025, how to explain Thomas the Great? What I submitted today. The bank account records that show I was paid by Little English in July of 2025, in August of 2025, in September of 2025, in November of 2025, and in February of 2026. It's a pretty darn rummy world where someone gets fired in June of 25 and they receive July, August, September, November, February, 5, count them, 5 paychecks deposited directly into the account. For what? For sitting here doing nothing, according to you. In the real world, Thomas, when you see that evidence, you start to think, hang on a second, I think Duncan might be right. I think Duncan was continuing to work for them. I think they were fine with him continuing to work for them. He was doing his online classes. And that's what happened. And we were wrong to assume he'd got fired. That's what a logical thinking person would say. Thomas, Jugglers, Janie, Luggy, everyone else. But only in your world where there's no documentation, no evidence, just gossip, just hearsay, just assumption, only in your world would you conclude that someone had gotten fired. But this is the point, Thomas. You think you know so much, you spout out so much shite, and yet when it comes to proving it, you have nothing. On the other hand, on my side, I wait for you to say all this nonsense, you make absolute fools of yourself, as you have done, Thomas, and then I produce the evidence, just to rub it in. But I do like this line. Thomas, this is from 1 day ago. So Thomas obviously hasn't got the memo that April the 3rd, 2026 was my last day working there. He says, it would just be escalated to the education authority. Okay, what are you going to say to the education authority? How are you going to escalate the fact, Thomas, that my last day of work was April the 3rd, 2026, and I have no connection with that company anymore? How do you escalate that to an education authority? No, we await your next post, Thomas, to explain how you're going to escalate to an education authority. Yeah, you say he couldn't possibly get around having left a damning trail behind him. What's the damning trail, exactly? Some would say that the fact he's able to argue recklessly about whether he was disposed of or not is a strong indicator that he's no longer with the school. Oh, actually, Thomas, there's an even stronger indicator that I'm no longer with the school. Number one, the school itself has removed me from their gallery. And number two, I'm telling you for the umpteenth time, Thomas, my last class with Little English was April the 3rd of 2026. I'm not sure what stronger indicators you need, Thomas, to conclude that I no longer work for the school. Is there anything else I can do, Thomas, in your childish mind to convince you that I do not work for this school? Tell me. You say if he was, he'd need to act with far more caution to avoid the previously mentioned escalation. Totally agree. Totally agree. If I was working for the school, I'd need to be a lot more cautious. The fact that I'm not being cautious, Thomas, should be, what is your word? Indicator that I don't work for them. How difficult is this, Thomas, for your tiny mind to grasp? And then Thomas concludes with, anyway, he's a little behind and clearly not aware of the latest developments on this yet, which is quite surprising for somebody who's still with the school. Once again, Thomas, this is getting a little repetitive, but I have to say it again. I am not still with the school, and I haven't been since April the 3rd of 2026. Do you understand that? ¿Comprendes todo eso o no, Thomas? ¿Es que tu comprends tout ça? Tipuni maish to ya govoriu. What language can I use, Thomas? I don't speak Geordie. That way the lads, do you understand it, man? Do you fully grasp, man, what I'm saying? I don't know how I can say it clearer, Thomas. I don't work for them anymore and haven't for some time. All right. Thomas has a problem with the word it. And it popped up again in the post I just read. This whole bit about it would just be escalated. It would just be escalated. What exactly is it, Thomas? It would just be escalated. I've noticed this about you, Thomas. You use the word it when you can't specify what the hell you mean. And if we go back to the very beginning of my online duel, joust, tussle with El Slugtardo, for example, it's Thomas that's always out there saying, well, it was all started. Yeah, it was all started. It started with Duncan, yeah, doxing Luggy. Well, what's it? It was started. What is it? If you mean the whole online aggressive and confrontational conversation between me and Ivor Lovelace, Thomas, no, it wasn't started by me. Not at all. So if we go with your word it, Thomas, it being the online confrontational lying talk, that was all started by Ivor Lovelace. The very first, I think it was back in August of 24, it could be September of 24. For the sake of argument, Thomas, let's say it was September 2024. The first correspondence, the first post that was put out there was a fabrication, a lie, and it was damning. Didn't come from me. It, if it means the online lies and abuse and fabrications, Thomas, came from one Lord Lugworm. And that was when your great buddy Lord Lugworm lied and said, I was a teacher in Valencia, Spain, teaching little kids. All lies, all made up, and I decided to challenge it. So if, Thomas, you want to go to the very, very beginning of it, this online confrontation, that was the moment, Thomas, when I decided we're not going to put up with this stupid cartoon name Luggy being paraded around as some kind of real person. I decided, let's find out who he is. And I did. And I did big time. And I nailed down exactly who he was. Yeah, and all the details about him that the world should know. You can't go around being some public figure saying, I found Jay. I'm part of the team that found Jay. I found Jay Slater. Me and my team, we found Jay Slater. Let me lecture you all on how we did it and just hide behind the name Luggy. No. In your phrase, I think, Thomas, or is it the general phrase of the accident group, or maybe it's a phrase of Luggy himself, outed. I outed who he was. But I did it, Thomas, because he had lied about me. It, your favourite word, it, Thomas, was started by your great chum, El Slugtardo. Everything that followed after that, Thomas, was because your great chum decided to start making up lies about me. That's where it started. Now, you've said, Thomas, that doxing is not a crime. I agree with you, because part of the definition of doxing is to do something with malicious intent. And that's a tough one to prove. So if you want to go down the route, Thomas, of sticking with what you said originally, that you're a doxer and there's nothing wrong with doxing, I'm fine with following that. But what I don't get here, Thomas, is if you are fine with doxing and you're fine with me doing the same thing, why is it your great buddies like Janie180 get all upset about it? I don't understand. Have you had this conversation, Thomas, with Janie, saying, look, doxing is fine. If Duncan doxed you, Luggy did it to him, and everything's fine. Where is that conversation, Thomas, between you and your cohorts, your allies, your fellow AG members, that explains because you're fine with doxing, they should be too? Because this is the hypocrisy, Thomas, that you have set up that really annoys the accident group. It is the accident group that rub their hands and whine and get all upset when their house is put out there. If, for example, Thomas, I've just copied your phrase, it was you, Thomas, that came up with, who lives in a house like this? That was your phrase. I think you took it from Warren originally, but then you adopted it to you showing a house with the words, who lives in a house like this? That's great. And if I do the same, that's great. Oh, but it isn't. So, Thomas, at what point did you go to people like Janie and said, look, I've done that to Duncan and other people, so it's okay if he does it to you, Janie, surely. Where have you had that conversation and agreed that it's all okay? Because if Janie, who is one of those that says it isn't okay, why hasn't she gone to you and said, you set a bad example, Thomas, and now I'm suffering? Why hasn't Janie had that conversation with you? Or has she? All I'm saying here, Thomas, is if you have set the standard, and it's not the gold standard, let's say, but if you have set the standard for the accident group in your online behavior, why do you think they are then complaining when the same thing happens back at them? Are you in agreement that they are only hypocrites to do that? What do you think, Thomas? Now, Thomas was a member, changed tact slightly here, Thomas was a member of a group called Z Hacking Company. I think I've got that right. The Z Hacking Company. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, that hacking is illegal. So I don't really understand how Thomas can say, yes, he was part of the Z Hacking Company, but he didn't do anything illegal. I've never really looked into this. I mean, now we know that Thomas the Wanker is Mark Dearden, is or was member of the Z Hacking Group. Would it not be possible for someone to raise the alarm with Northumbria Police and say, hang on, there's a guy here boasting he's part of a Z Hacking Group, and is there any evidence that Z Hacking Group has hacked someone? I would say if they have, and hacking, whether it's for material, financial benefit, or just to make a political statement, hacking is still breaking into a private information database, as far as I understand hacking. Whatever the benefits or lack of benefit to it, the actual act of hacking is illegal. I wonder if anyone has mentioned to Northumbria Police that this is the guy that confesses to being part of an illegal group, a hacking group. I don't know. My days are rather full. I haven't gone down that path, but I think it might be worth exploring. So let's wrap this one up because it's gone on a bit longer than I wanted. Mark Dearden, Thomas Wilson, Thomas the Terrible, Thomas the Great, Thomas the Wanker, assuming it's all the same person. Confessed, age 18, Newcastle Crown Court, convicted, sentenced to 2 years in prison. We know that. Comes from the horse's mouth. Member of Z Hacking Group, I'm guessing, if he has participated in said activity, he should be convicted, tried and convicted, I would think, for a second time. But more than that, I would say Dearden is the dullard of the accident group. Why? Because even now, at this very minute, he still doesn't understand that I have said My former employers have said I specified the date when I stopped working, and he still insists I claim to be working for the Little English group. When, Mark Dearden, will you understand that you've got it wrong? You guys were the ones that said you knew I'd got fired. I think I've proven you totally wrong. But at what point do you step back and say, yeah, I get it. We have no evidence. He's got all the evidence. I think he's right. Again. Mark Dearden, start listening, thinking, and working it out, rather than reacting and making an absolute fool of yourself every single time. Hasta luego, hasta la vista. Jul5 tonight. I think we are on. I think it is a go. I will see you there. Hasta luego, adios. See you next time.